talk to my mother, you will know that I struggle to make decisions on what shirt to buy at the store, the red one or the blue one. So making a decision that alters the course of my life and the way that I live was a little bit higher stakes. Was I ever fearful? Yes, with all capital letters and exclamation points. So apart from kind of the boyish thoughts of priesthood when I was younger, the first time where kind of the idea of priesthood really manifested itself in a real way in my life, my immediate reaction to God in that was, no, I'm happy. Why would you want to make me unhappy in my life? You deal with it. I vividly remember the time after that moment in prayer, being at Mass on Sunday and literally not praying "Thy will be done" when praying the Our Father at Mass, because I didn't want to do what I thought was the will of God, because I was scared out of my mind. I think the fear was everything that I had to give up, or that I perceived that I had to give up. And so it was the fear of, could I give these things up? Because I might miss out. If I don't pick the other one, then I might miss out with what that. FOMO. How did God resolve that fear? By helping me to stop looking only at what I was giving up and open me to receive what I was going to be given. And to understand that there's no real choice made in life without giving something up. Right? You can't say yes to one thing without saying no to probably multiple things. And so just kind of at the same time growing in the willingness to receive what was being offered in the priesthood and not just focusing on all the sacrifices that I was going to have to make. And it was focused more on that relationship with Christ. Being a young man that was not all that mature and considering a substantial kind of call in life made me want to go all in and all out. And there was nothing in between for a long time. And so it was the roller coaster from wanting to give everything to Christ and forsake everything that I did know and love in my life up until that point and say, okay, I'm all in, I'm selling all my goods and I'm following you, Lord. And then 24 or 48 hours later, it's like, there's no way I can do this. This doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fit with what I know and what I love, and wanting to walk away. And so that was the swinging pendulum, or the roller coaster up and down of, discernment being too tied to my emotional state and not to, again, that relationship with Christ. What came quite late in discernment prior to ordination was an understanding that the desires that I have are God-given. They might need to be purified, stripped back, but the desires that I have are God-given, and God does not want to deny me what I desire because He's given me that. But what in discernment, through prayer, through my will, being paired with that desire, is coming to understand how focusing on Christ actually becomes the fulfillment of desire. So guys, kind of growing in integrity as a person, allowing all those different parts of myself to speak to each other, or probably more accurately, to allow Christ to speak to all of them at once. The drinking out of a fire hose that is the beginning of priesthood is the emotional roller coaster that it is. As one priest friend of mine said to me a couple years in, a priest can sometimes go through in one day what it can take some people a lifetime to experience. So I remember in my first couple years, there was a Saturday where I quite literally had a funeral, a wedding, and a baptism all in one day. And so you're walking with people through the emotions of those particular moments of their life. And then you walk away from that at the end of the day, and you have to process the joy of new birth and the hopeful anxiety of a marriage, and then the sadness of a loss of a loved one all at once, not in pieces. And then you wake up the next day and do something completely different the next one. Of course, there's loneliness. The loneliness isn't necessarily just from living alone. Right? There's a certain loneliness that comes from the vocation itself, which is unique and not shared by many. And so there's a loneliness experienced just in, living the priesthood and having very few that can truly identify and understand what that vocational experience is. So fraternity with brother priests is huge for that. And going back to prayer, deepening that intimacy with Christ is essential. And so when prayer suffers, that loneliness increases, because you can very much feel like you're doing it alone. And then if you're not bringing it to prayer, then you're processing everything that you're going through alone in your own mind and your own thoughts. And as one Catholic speaker said, engaging with your own thoughts alone is like walking into a bad neighborhood. Don't go alone. So now that I've been here for a year and a half, when I go into the schools, I'm recognized and known and loved. And so I can't walk through the hallways without getting multiple hugs from kids that want to give Father Kris a hug, and they'll scream from across the hallway even when the teacher's telling them to silently walk to the library to say hi to Father Kris. And so I feel like I'm part of the community again. That's a real blessing to have a home and a family. Told parishioners, I look forward to Sunday, because for me it's like family coming home for Sunday dinner. And when there's people that are missing from Sunday Mass for whatever reason, they're away or not around, I miss seeing them in their spot in the church. Because when I look out at the congregation at the 9 o'clock Mass or the 11 o'clock Mass, I have faces that I would like to see. I don't usually tell them this because they don't want to hear this, but when I'm preaching, I'm thinking of specific people. Right? People who know that, I always tell them, I'm never saying something to a specific person. There has to be at least 3 people who share the same situation for me to use it as an example in preaching. But I'm praying for the people who've shared their parts of their lives with me. When I'm celebrating Mass and I look out where we're praying the prayers of the faithful, I'm like, I know that you're struggling with family issues. I know that there's health issues in your life. I know that you are mourning that your children and grandchildren are not here at Mass with you. I know that you are a mom that is striving to bring your children up in the faith even though you have a husband who doesn't support it. And so I'm able to share that with them, and that's the joy of the priesthood. One of the biggest challenges for me as a priest celebrating Mass is trying to keep my poker face. The Mass draws me into prayer whether I want to or not. And it draws out of me the things that I sometimes avoid in my private prayer outside of the Mass. I find in the celebration of the Mass for myself is a slow deepening of an understanding of the mystery of the life of Jesus and the imprint that has on my life. The reminder that there is nothing greater that I can do than this. That when I want to focus on what I'm able to do by my gifts and talents, in the end, they won't matter if I don't celebrate the Eucharist for the people of God and bring them Christ in the Eucharist. There's something unique about the celibate priesthood in that fatherhood that I think is expressed there. And I don't know if I'd be able to fully put my finger on what that is, but in the way that people come to me as a priest, particularly it strikes me most often when it's people that I don't even know or know very little. And what they entrust me with, it becomes this deep awareness of my priesthood is not mine. That there's the fatherhood that comes out of that priesthood is not something that is first manifested by my qualities as a human being, but first out of who I am. That kind of parallels itself with biological fatherhood insofar as it doesn't matter how good a father is or how bad a father is, there's always that relationship to your father. That manifests itself in priesthood, in that spiritual fatherhood, in the same way. Well, if you would have asked me that question when I was first ordained, I would have had lots of answers for you. What priesthood has broken in me is the ability to look too far ahead. I have always been an excessive planner and overthinker about the future, but with everything that priestly life throws my way, it's forced me to learn how to be present to the moment. So are there times where I think about what I might be doing in 10 years as a priest? Sure. But I'm very quickly reminded that I really don't have any control over that because it's not my decision to make. For a young man, growing in maturity is wrestling with your fears. Because of our general aversion to discomfort in the way that we go about our life, there can be a real temptation to just circumvent our fears as much as we can. Face that fear, right? Facing that fear doesn't mean that you're going to be a priest. Facing that fear might just make you a better husband down the road. But if you don't face that fear, it's going to permanently stunt your spiritual and human growth, because only through fear do we come to know, one, the love of God for us in all things, two, how irrational our fears can be, knowing that what I perceive to be my limitations probably aren't what my limits actually are.